Hi guys, and welcome to the O-Lift podcast, where we discuss everything about Olympic weightlifting. My name is Anton Jefferson.
And I'm JP Nicoletta, and Anton, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
All right, so at the 2016 American Open, you were locked in an epic battle for 31st place in the men's 77 kilo category, which you won.
Yes.
On a tie against Anthony Ho of Sense Weightlifting in California. That's Nip Din's team. They're doing a great job out there, by the way. But in any case, you were the winner of the tie, which gave you 31st place with a 256 kilo total.
Yeah.
And the question is why? A, that you did the total first because you lifted in the D session and he lifted in the C session. Is it because you had a lower body weight? I guess that would be choice B. Or was it choice C, that you did the total first in accordance with some other classification rule, not including body weight?
Including body weight, because I'm assuming the rule change hadn't taken an effect yet.
Okay, so I tried to trick you.
Yeah.
I didn't upset you, and I tried to trick you. And you didn't take the bait on either one. It was a great example, and I was just figuring, I looked at that session. I wanted to look at that meet that you were in because I was like, oh, there's like 50 of them there.
Yeah.
There had to be like 7 or 8 guys who totaled the same thing.
Dude, it was like a 30-minute wait for like the same, 140 to 145.
Yeah, but there aren't that many of you who had the same total. I was like, oh, this is great. We can really... I thought it would be really funny if you were in the mix with a bunch of guys who did the same total. But yeah, in that case, you were lighter than the other lifter, and it was 2016. So that was the last major meet, at least in the U.S., where body weight was still a factor, even after you weighed a little bit less than that guy, Anthony. Even so, the point or the topic that we're going to talk about still is relevant with this example because we'll take out the body weight category and we'll talk about it. So obviously the topic that we're speaking about today is who lifted it first, how to survive weightlifting without the body weight advantage rule. Because I think sometimes this, even though we're still in the first year of it, it comes up as a point of confusion.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be something that people are going to take a little while to understand when it comes to determining the placement in competition, because we're so used to using the advantage of being, 0.1 kilos lighter than the other guy to win.
Yeah, whatever it is that you weigh, just the idea of being lighter to break a tie. And specifically with this rule, I think everybody gets that part of it, right? Like, I don't think we struggle with that so much. Where I think the rule has created some confusion from time to time is when you have meets with, A or B or C sessions and the question of who lifted it first comes up. And I don't remember that ever really being a debate when body weight was still a factor.
Yes. Yeah, body weight kind of superseded everything, and so you didn't really need much when two guys were, battling out doing the same identical total.
And it didn't matter what session they were in. Everybody would just look to the body weight and say, oh, okay, that, the lighter guy is the leader, right? But now that that's out, for some reason, there are a lot of people who get tripped up and they start saying, well, who did it first? And they look at it and they say, well, he was in the B session, he did it first. Mm-hmm. But that's not how it works.
So tell us how it works.
So it's obviously the highest total first, and then the thing that is gone, what used to be second was body weight, and now it's basically who did it first. And what that means is who reached a total first, or if you're going to do the individual lifts to talk about like the snatch or the clean and jerk individually, who did the weight first that the two people are tied with.
And when you say who did it first, it's who successfully attempted that weight.
And what that means is what attempt number did they do it on, first, second, or third? And if they both did it on the same attempt number, what was the prior attempt number? Meaning if you and I both did the same lift on our third attempt, what did we do on our second attempts? If I took a lighter weight on our second attempt, obviously I did the third attempt first because of the order of lifting. So that's what controls it. And then if we both did the same thing on the prior attempt, and let's just say we did the same thing on our first attempt, then you would go to lot number. So that is like the order. I mean, now we can link, I guess, to the actual rule at 6.8.2 in the TCRR. But the whole point of this exercise, where I feel like the discussion comes up a lot, where people factor time.
What do you mean when you say people factor time?
Like the B session happening first.
If there's a guy in a B session and there's another guy in an A session and they attempt, the same exact lift, who wins? And there are a couple factors that come into play. And you just discussed, first of all, the guy who successfully attempts the weight first with the least amount of attempts would be the winner.
Right. So let's go back to your American Open tie for 31st place, right?
The glory days.
Yeah, from December. When I just compare you, the two lifters that did the 256, so you and Anthony Ho both did 256.
Sure,
you opened with 106. He opened with 110. Mm-hmm. He missed 110, but you did 110 on your second attempt. He missed 110 on his second attempt, and then you ultimately made 113, and then he made 110 on his third attempt. Okay, so there's a couple of things there. Firstly, it doesn't matter that you were in a D and he was in a C session. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking at the order of lifting, you combine it. So even though you lifted in a D session at a different time, technically the order of lifting of 106 means that you would have gone first. Yes. So had you both snatched 110, you ultimately did 113, which puts you ahead. But had you both just did 110, you made it on your second attempt, he made it on his third, you would have still been the leader. If you would have both made it on your second attempts, you would have still been a leader because you opened with a lighter weight. So that's like a good example of it. And then in terms of the total, the reason why you break the tie, or the reason why you win that tie, is because you snatched more, which means you had to clean and jerk less to get to that 256. Right? So because you did 113, you marry that up against your 143 clean and jerk, that's 256. He needed to clean and jerk 146 to get to that number, to get to that total, which obviously means it happened after you, if you were in the same session. So I guess that's what it comes down to. You have to consider or pretend when you're reading the scoreboard that everybody is in the same session.
If this was, let's say, like more of a local meet, it'll probably be one heat, one session per weight class. And sometimes they're combined because there's not enough people.
Yeah, so at a local meet, I don't think that there are much, I like to use the term stakes. Like, I don't think that it's really like a high stakes scenario where this matters that much across session to session. And it's unlikely, like you said, that there would be an A and a B session at a local meet. It does happen sometimes. At national meets like an American Open or a Nationals, you obviously will get an ABC session set up, but I don't know even there that it matters so much. You know what I mean? Like, I'm using your example again just to play around with it. But I mean, like, you didn't care, or that lifter didn't care about being ahead of you lifting in a different session. It didn't matter, right? But at a world or at an IWF or an international event, it's a huge deal. If you're talking about points for world championship qualifiers and, one of our lifters is in a C session versus somebody who's, in a B session, another nation that we're up against, that we're trying to, stay ahead of in the qualification table or the point tally, you have to know how to break these ties or what to take in the event that you need to just place one spot ahead of somebody for team points.
Now, I will say this. I strategically placed myself in a D session because I just wanted to lift. Okay. So I didn't put in my highest total that I could have used because I didn't really want to battle with anybody, flying like 16 hours to come over jet lagged. I was like, I just want to go out there and lift. So whoever the guys are.
That should have been another option in the multiple choice. Like, the reason why you broke the ties, we traveled the furthest to the American.
Like, I lost like 2 kilos on a plane. So.
You actually bring up something that I didn't realize that is important for anybody who enters any national meet. I didn't realize that you could use an unofficial number under or lower than your
less than total. Your total.
Right. So you can't use a total that you haven't done. It's not like an IWF meet where you can just create something for placement into like an A session. And any number you use obviously has to be higher than the minimum qualifying total.
Yes.
A class or an event that you want to go to. Like, if you had a 270 total, I'm just picking a number out of the air. Let's just say you had a 270 total and you wanted to lift at the 77 kilo class at the American Open. You don't have to use that number. You could just pick 250 or whatever that qualifying total was.
Yeah, 256 was a qualifying total.
So you could just say 256.
So I've done more, but I put in, just the bare minimum just to get in there. So with the history of the rule, it used to be a lot determined by body weight. We discussed that. Does the 2.5 incremental increase play in the factor here?
Oh, what do you mean? Like in the past when our minimum increase used to be a 2.5 kilo minimum?
2.5 Yes.
Yeah, I think that was
Yes.
yeah. So back when there was a minimum 2.5 kilo increase, that obviously this was the rule with the body weight breaking the tie, lower body weight breaking the tie. For some reason, it felt like that made sense when you could only take a two, or when your only option was a 2.5 or more.
Yeah.
It seems like it made sense that the lighter body weight would gain some advantage to break that tie.
Mhm.
But when the rule changed in the, I guess it was the early 2000s when we went to the 1 kilo rule,
Mhm.
it's funny. It took until 2016 or 2017 for this to come into effect. Like it took over 10 years for us to, as a sport, look at it and be
Like
like,
I
it
like
doesn't
I feel like
matter.
there
It
was a
doesn't,
coach out there who was just complaining for like like 10 years. Like, when are they gonna update
yeah,
this?
right. Yeah, and I don't know what the basis of it was. I mean, it came from the IWF technical committee, and I don't know that a lot of people were even thinking about it when they made the
Yeah,
announcement.
I don't think it was a big concern, you
It
know?
just sort of was the way it was. Everybody just said, okay, yeah, you break a tie using body weight. But I think in this case, that technical committee decision, I think the IWF technical committee was right in looking at it and saying, look, it doesn't really matter. And the other thing that it does is that it forces somebody, we're talking about an instance where it can get confusing between a B session and an A session. But the one thing that I think it accomplishes that it forces you to actually win. It
Yes,
takes
which is
away
fantastic.
that end of the session attempt to merely tie somebody because you have a lower body weight.
But looking at body weight itself, there's been some historic, wins on body weight. It's kind of interesting when you think about it, because this person didn't have to attempt it first before me. They know what they needed to tie with me, given the fact that they knew that they were at a lighter body weight.
Right.
And so we can look most recently at the 2016 Olympics between the 77 kilo lifters. Liu Xiaojun lost to the Kazakhstan lifter, who attempted a monster clean and jerk
Rahimov, world
only to
record, right?
tie him.
Yeah.
Yeah, to tie, a 214 clean and jerk. He would have needed 215 kilos. And looking at that lift, everybody knows that that guy did not have another kilo in him at that moment. So,
To your point, that epic moment was determined basically by a tie, whereas now you still need 1 kilo more. And the other thing too, I
yeah.
guess what sort of happens as a result also is that I think that puts a little more emphasis on the snatch, right? Like
Yes. Yes.
it had always been
Yeah.
I guess like the mantra of weightlifting that it's the clean and jerk that sorts it out.
Is that the case anymore?
It's still, I guess it's still true, but if you have a lead in the snatch, I mean, it
You gotta beat me. Yeah, you gotta beat
or
me.
if you have a 1 kilo lead, they have to beat you by two.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it feels different now, just a little.
Yeah.
But
Which is good. I mean, it's weightlifting. I mean, there is strategy to our sport, which I love, but it shouldn't be strategic to tie me because your lifter came in light. I always hated that. I feel as though we should maximize, as much as the body weight category as you can. And we should, if I'm a 69 or you're a 68.2, it doesn't matter. We're all 69s now.
I mean, I guess there is one scenario where a tie would, be broken. Well, no, not by body weight, but I mean, where a tie would be broken by lot number. And that's literally if you and I did the exact same string of attempts.
Numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, and then that's common too at a more, I would say,
Crowded.
something like American Open,
Where
or,
you have a lot of people.
yeah, where you have these guys, like all of our guys in my weight category, we are all based around the same total, and it was like 256. And so it was the entry level total that you needed to hit. So, a lot of guys were trying to stay at or above that weight. And that brings up another cool example or interesting thing, is that when people don't hit the qualifying total in competition, which they use to qualify for, it's like, kind of sketchy here.
Different Pandora's box. I think when that happens, you can't use the total for team points.
Yeah, well,
Pretty
that's
sure
good.
That's the case.
Because it's an indicator of maybe a bad day, or maybe.
Or maybe somebody had the day. We'll play the optimistic way. Somebody had the day of their life to get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, that happens. That happens a decent amount. I mean, I think it happens quite a bit. But
Yeah. So I can't determine any other way other than what we've already laid out of how to win a session now without doing more weight than your opponent, which is fantastic. Other than is lifting it first.
yeah, and I think the moral to the story with this rule, the thing to really pay attention to is that you have to ignore an A session or a B session or a C session. It doesn't matter. The only time that does matter is with world records. But how often does that occur? Well, I mean, any records. But I mean, like if you were to do an American record out of a B session and then I tied it or somebody tied it in an A session, you did it first in the B. That's the only time actual, what I think I heard referred to as clock time matters, is with records. But in regard to placements and classifying athletes based on a score sheet on a protocol, you have to completely ignore what session they did something in and look at the string of attempts. So that's what it comes down to.
There you have it, folks. Who lifted it first? Determine placement in competition. No more ties on body weight, which is fantastic because we're in the sport of lifting weights, and the competition is to lift more weight than the next guy. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with more episodes.